Good afternoon and welcome to the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and Glendale Housing Authority for February 25th, 2020. May we have roll call for the city?
Council members Agajanian,
Present.
Devine,
Here.
Quintero,
Here.
Garpetian,
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here.
May I have roll call for Housing Authority?
Authority members Devine,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Barazian,
Here.
Quintero,
Here.
Garpetian,
Here.
Chair Agajanian.
Present.
Thank you. May we have your report?
The agenda for the February 25th, 2020 joint public meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority was posted on Tuesday, February 18, 2020 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Ms. Beers?
Mr. Mayor and Chair, if I can read the item into the record.
Yes, first item, please.
Director of Community Services and Parks regarding acceptance of grant funds from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the 2019 Continuum of Care Program. 1A is Housing Authority motion approving acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $2,395,762 from HUD for the 2019 COC program and authorizing the city manager to execute all agreements, certificates, and documents necessary to accept and implement the funds. B is a council motion approving acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $2,395,762 from HUD for the 2019 COC program and authorizing city manager to execute all agreements, certificates, and documents necessary to accept and implement the funds. C is a resolution appropriating $2,395,762.
Ms. Beers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Chair Agajanian, members of the Housing Authority. In September of 2019, this authority and the City Council gave us the allowance to submit our NOFA application for funding. We are here today to ask you for the acceptance of the funding, and Ms. Yvette Samvalian is here to provide you with a report if you would like and to answer any questions that you may have as well. With that, Mr. Mayor and Ms. Samvalian.
Thank you, Ms. Beers. Good afternoon, Mayor Najarian, Chair Agajanian, members of the Housing Authority and Council. Yvette Samvalian, as Ms. Beers explained, on September 10th of 2019, the Glendale Homeless Continuum of Care submitted a funding application on behalf of City of Glendale for to Housing Urban Development for $2.5 million, which funds 14 projects. Those 14 projects are itemized in your Exhibit 1, operated from various agencies such as Ascensia, Salvation Army, Family Promise, and the Glendale Housing Authority. Last month, we received the conditional awards for Tier 1 of the funding announcements, which amounts to $2.3 million. And today we're here before you to ask City Council and Housing Authority to accept the Tier 1 funding for $2.3 million to work with our subrecipients to execute the grants. And staff will come back to you in the future date for the second funding, which are the Tier 2 that would fund the Salvation Army Chester Street Permanent Housing and some of the case management services operated by Ascensia. The 14 different projects that are before you are renewal projects that fund about 150 units of homeless services and housing subsidies for homeless households. And overall, through the Continuum of Care, this funding supports about 2,500 unduplicated homeless persons that come to the Glendale Continuum of Care within the different organizations and receive outreach, case management, emergency shelter, and ultimately permanent housing services. So today we're here before you asking to accept the funds and allow staff to work with agencies to continue the execution of the grant agreements with them for services.
Could you remind us how they came to the figure of $2,586,000? What is the basis? Why we couldn't get more, let's say?
Chair Agajanian, in terms of the funding that comes about from the federal government, each year they announce the NOFA, and each city is eligible for a certain portion of dollars. And it's based on the population, the poverty, and homeless services delivery system, based on the homeless count for the city. And so for City of Glendale, our total eligible award is about $2.5 million, which we submitted the applications for. And part of that gets funded with Tier 1, and then half of it gets funded with Tier 2. That's how HUD funds the projects. They don't allocate all of the funding in the first round of announcements. they typically allocate funding for new projects later after all of the grant funds have been renewed and are ready to roll out. The funding basically provides the housing subsidies for our homeless participants. It's similar to the Section 8 program, but it's geared for homeless services, and folks pay about 30% of their income for rent, and then the grant subsidies pay about 70%, while they continue to become sober and access mental health services and health services and become self-sufficient to move on into independent housing.
Thank you.
Ms. Devine?
Can you mentioned that the Chester Street Permanent Supportive Housing Program is Tier 2. Are there others? I'm sorry, you went through it pretty fast. Which other ones are Tier 2, so that we know which ones are being subsidized by this?
Yes, Ms.
first
Devine.
grant?
Chester Street is one of the projects that provides 4 families with permanent housing subsidies. That's one of the projects is in Tier 2. The second project that's in Tier 2, it's called CES Reallocation. And what that means, that's a program that's operated by Essentia. And a portion of the funds for that project is our outreach services and case management services. That is ranked in Tier 2. And so we're in the hopes that in the summer we get the Tier 2 funding announcements from HUD for these 2 projects.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that when people ask me, and I've been asked for the last 6 months, about how we handle our homeless situation in Glendale, I always reference them to our Continuum of Care. And thank you for doing such a great job, you and all of those that are a part of this Continuum of Care, that gives us hope that our homeless count will either be eliminated or remain small enough that we can handle it and still and give help to those that need it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this.
You have a question? Mr. Karpetian?
Yes, so this amount is being divided or being distributed between Family Promise, Salvation Army, and Essentia?
And the Glendale Housing Authority that
Glendale
oversees
Housing
the Shelter Plus Care rental subsidy program.
The resolution of 1C, I don't know, there's no number. It says sum of $2,300,000 appropriated under transfer from following accounts to the following accounts. So from federal grants, Continuum of Care account to $240,000, $72,000, then Essentia is $2 million. Am I reading this correctly?
So the resolution is with regards to how we encumber the funds. The 2.3 is the entire funding that we receive from the federal government.
Okay.
Of the 2.3, $240,000 is allocated for salaries of staff managing the grants in the Continuum of Care. $72,000 is allocated for the Continuum of Care planning grant, and direct assistance that gets passed through from the City of Glendale to our nonprofits is about $2 million and some change. So out of the 2.3, $2 million is directly passed through our nonprofits. That's Essentia, Family Promise, Salvation Army for the subsidies and the services for the
And
clients.
that breakdown is on the next page, which has Essentia for 374, now Housing Now program, Family Promise of Verdugo's Rapid Housing Program, 103,000. Is that the breakdown?
That's correct, yes.
So the Shelter Plus Care project, can you explain to me what that
Yes.
is? And
So-
who's managing that?
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. So the Shelter Plus Care projects are administered through Glendale Housing Authority. We are the recipients of these funds. The
Okay.
program operates essentially the same way as the Section 8 program. We determine homeless households that are eligible for the program. They're enrolled into permanent housing services. The participants pay 30% of their income towards rent. The grant subsidy pays 70% of those. These the project serves chronically homeless individuals with disabilities. Some of them are not employable, and some maybe. If they are employable, we connect them to employment services. We currently have 55 total vouchers under the various Shelter Plus Care grants, and bulk of the funds go directly to the rent subsidies. And our owners pretty much work with us on a fair market rent level to work with our population in terms of these grant funds.
So it's about 700,000 take?
That's correct. Between four of the projects is around 750,000.
And next step, permanent supportive housing project. Can you explain that one
Yes,
to me,
thank
please?
you. The Next Step Permanent Supportive Housing Project is a project sponsored by Essentia. This is, the project serves 8 chronically homeless individuals who are substance abuse recovery, and they're in housing, recovering, and also receiving employment services. And so once they're completed the recovery system and become sober and are able to complete full-time employment, they're moved on to independent housing after the project supports that transition.
Okay. And the CES reallocation 2018?
Thank you. So the CES reallocation project, this is all the case management services that is assigned or operated through Essentia. Essentia is our coordinated entry lead for the Glendale Homeless Continuum of Care. All 2,500 homeless individuals basically are entered through Essentia. They complete the intake and assessment. The project funds about 12 different case managers, whether it's mental health specialist, a therapist, substance abuse, veteran services specialist, so very unique case management positions, part of the project, and folks are entered and then work with shelter services, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent housing. So about 2,500 people go through intake and assessment each year through Essentia, and that's what the funding supports, the case management services and the mental health services for the clients,
And,
including some of our outreach services.
And the majority of them are from outside Glendale, if I'm not mistaken.
We have about 70% that are local homeless and about 30% non-Glendalians. And homelessness is a regional issue, so people just come through the city where they feel safe and
No,
and
my
receive
question was about
services.
the 2,500 people there, 70% are from Glendale?
Right, yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I have a question, Yvette. If we were not a continuum of care, would we be eligible for these funds?
Mayor Najarian, no, we would not be eligible for this funds part of City of Glendale. We would then combine or collaborate with Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, part of LAHSA, and go under their jurisdiction. In a sense, they would be overseeing 86 cities out of the 88. So currently, Glendale, Pasadena, Long Beach is its own continuum, and LAHSA oversees the 85 communities.
Are we getting a better funding amount through this method, being our own continuum of care rather than lumping in with LAHSA? I mean, what do you, there's no
Mayor-
right or wrong answer, but what do you think for that? Because
Mayor-
we discussed that.
Yes.
Especially with the supervisors, we want credit for those 30% that are non-Glendale residents, that they should be taken care of. And they're very hesitant to do that. Oh, well, you've got your own continuum of care, you have your own funding source, if they shift over or blend over to Glendale, that's not our issue. But what do you think about that?
Mayor Najarian.
Speak freely, speak freely. We'll turn off the videos.
Having to work with for the City of Glendale the past 20-some years and running the homeless programs, in my opinion, is that we're at the best to be our own continuum of care. Why? Because a resident, business owner can call, and within an hour, our outreach services are there trying to talk to the clients. Services are there. If clients are ready for housing and we have adequate resources, clients are placed into programming. If we were not to be a continuum of care and we join the LAHSA service system, it's county, it's regional, we may benefit from some mental health services funding or human and health services funding. However, our clients would not be receiving specialized, intensive, really direct services at the level that our nonprofit organizations and our outreach teams provide to our clients in the City of Glendale.
Very good. Mr. Quintero.
You mentioned Pasadena and Glendale. Is Burbank tied to Los Angeles for their homeless issues?
Member Quintero, City of Burbank is part of Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, but they've been taking the lead the last 2 years implementing homeless services systems. They recently opened an emergency shelter for transitional youth and general population. They opened an access center. They received some funding through Measure H from county. So they're stepping up in terms of handling homelessness in their community. but they are eligible to apply through Los Angeles Continuum of Care for additional funding for homeless delivery systems.
Okay, thank you very much for your good work
Thank you.
and for the community. We have a council motion at 1B.
I'll move 1B for the council.
Second.
Let's make sure. Yes, council's at 1B and 1C, the resolution.
I'll move 1B and 1C for the council.
Seconded by Ms. Devine. Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. And I'll move 1A for the Housing Authority.
Second.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Authority members Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Brazilian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Chair Agajanian?
Yes.
We don't have any other business on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn for council?
So moved.
Second.
Council's adjourned.
Is there a motion for Housing Authority to close the meeting?
I'll second. First by Mr. Quintero.
So
We're adjourned.
you're
And we have closed session.